All right, everyone, we should be live. Let's make sure that's actually the case. Over on Rumble, etc. Making sure that chat works. I see Morgan Heverin says, morning. Salty Badlands, God spoke and there was light. Satan spoke and it was taxed. And Bena Layman saying, good morning. And Clank, index 373, saying Clank as well. Clank on, my fellow coffee aficionados. I do have some clanking for you today. Yes, indeed. It's a high caffeine day. We got a lot to cover. I'm going to talk about Coffinriders, especially David Pakman, although there are examples from the left and the right on the Nashville case that we do have to talk about here. Agatha Christie getting Stalinized. Now, she would be rolling over in her grave. She died back in the fucking 1970s, and they're still doing it. Also, Elizabeth Warren appears to have backhanded Kamala Harris with regards to her Senate re-election campaign and her desire to see Biden run, and a specific quote in here. And we're going to unpack that and much, much more. Let's make sure we're actually live on Rumble, though. Yes, Kitty, you don't need to go over there in front of the screen, to be clear. No, you don't need to go over there. You can stay here. She always tries to do that. She thinks she is the computer screen. I should be watching her, not watching what I'm doing. No, that's not a workaround. She's trying to go around the microphone. I wish you could see her right now. She does this every time. Yeah, I see that we're live on Rumble. No, that's not a place for a kitty. Come on. Look at this big bohemian. Look at this big belugal cat. How belugal can you be? Now, what do you have to say about yourself? What do you have to say in your defense? Who's my kitty? Wow. Big monkey cat. She looks like a monkey, doesn't she? Big wide eyes and crazy face and all that stuff. Sassy attitude. Oh, here comes the other kitty. She's probably going to try to come up as well. Anyway, I'll try not to get distracted by the cacophony, the zoo that is around me at the moment, so we can talk about various other things. Let's see here. Just a second. I got to make sure my tabs are straight and everything. Now those look fine. Okay, we're going to talk about Coffinrider. Well, actually, Anthony Thompson sent $2. No comment. Thank you. You are the first super chat of the day. We'll talk about Coffinriders, though, now, specifically related to the Nashville shooting. Happened the other day at Coventry School. It was a Presbyterian school. By the way, unlike Coffinriders, I'm willing to correct myself. Originally, I was led to believe it was a Catholic school. It's actually Presbyterian. And so it's a religious school. And a person came in and shot several kids there. I believe that the gun Zier, I suppose we'll say, has been liquidated. So good news for all. No need for a lengthy and expensive trial when you can just kill the psychopaths. Thank you to the people there for actually doing your job, unlike the people in Uvalde and elsewhere, which was probably not done properly on purpose, but we'll get past that. And the cat once again trying to creep in here and be the computer screen. So please sit down and please don't knock that over. Thank you very much. I appreciate the constant distractions. We're going to talk about Coffinriders. Coffinriders are people who, for clout purposes, weigh in on events like the school shooting, a bombing, something that happens in war, and their takes are always very stupid. The award of the grifting Coffinrider of the day, all right, Kitty, you can go to the side then, goes to David Pakman. David Pakman's original tweet, archived, of course, link in the description. You can follow along with these news stories. This is what he had to say almost immediately after the news broke. David Pakman, March 27th, 2023. And almost 2 million people viewed this. So, hey, David, archives are forever. Very surprising that there would be a mass shooting in a Christian school, given that the lack of prayer is often blamed for these horrible events. Is it possible they weren't praying enough or correctly, despite being a Christian school? Now, David Pakman could have just said, hey, I worded my tweet improperly, and people got mad at me, and I got massively ratioed, so I've got egg on my face. Now, I apologize for causing people distress and riding the goddamn coffins of dead kids to try to get more Twitter clout. He could have done that. It would have been more fitting. Instead, he decided to delete it. That's why it's archived, of course, and follow up with it with this. All right, too many anti-Semitic attacks and threats to my family. I've delete the tweet. Now, you can tell that he was nervous about the massive ratio and the outpouring of ridicule he was getting because he's spelling improperly. At the very least, give him credit for being rhetorically sound, generally speaking. So I'm having trouble believing this wasn't hastily made. People pointing out, they went through the comments. They didn't see any anti-Semitism, which could be as innocuous as literally criticizing David Pakman. And he says, the threats were in my email. He's gotten ratioed, by the way, on his response as well, not without good reason. So, yeah, Head Coffin Writer Award goes to David Pakman. Congratulations. You are being flippant about dead children, and you have thus created for yourself the moniker of Coffin Writer. And this is what I fucking hate. But before I go into a couple of these others, I hate it when people come out and their response to some tragic event is literally nothing more than clout seeking. It's attention whoring. It's fame. It's grifting, effectively. Hey, look at me. I've got the shittiest take on this event that I could possibly have. Give me attention. Give me a few more subscribers or followers or something like that. And his is not the only bad take. We've got Marjorie Taylor Greene. We're going to have to criticize her as well. Now, I like some of her policies. She stood by Trump, and I support him. But that does not mean that you're going to escape unscathed for having such a cold take here. The female Nashville shooter identifies as a man. Fact check, true. Now, this is a transgendered individual. So shouldn't we just blame white men again? Yeah, that's really helpful, MTG. It's helpful for the conversation that people are trying to have right now to point this out. You've got the libtoids constantly rambling about the AR-15 or guns in general right now, and your hot take is this. That's helpful. It really helps those of us who are of more sound mind and body than you. Al Franken weighed in. There is no reason to have assault weapons. None. Well, the AR-15 is not one, but we'll get past that colloquial usage. Let's ban them and buy back every one at fair market price and see what happens after 5 years. Probably a lot of boating accidents. Al. By the way, you are a pervert. You had 8 women claiming that you sexually assaulted them. One of them had photographic evidence, and half of your party threw you under the bus. Could it be he's just trying to disarm women so he can victimize them more? Yeah, with Al Franken, who fucking knows now? Also grifting. David Hogg, but I mean, he makes a living grifting off of tragedy. He's technically the head coffin rider. It's just that the David Pakman take is worse than his. I'm sure David Hogg is sad about that, by the way, that Pakman is getting more negative attention than him. Oh, my guns. The gun literally got up in the morning and decided to shoot a bunch of people. No human agent was required for that. It's the NRA's fault. You know, the bunch of FUDs that themselves don't even stand for keeping the AR-15 legal and basically cuck on the issue. They're responsible. A bunch of hunters, a bunch of dudes with 12-gauge shotguns or primitive revolvers from 100 years ago they got from their great-granddad. Those are the ones clearly doing all of the mass shootings in the country. Not mainly gangbangers in inner city areas with handguns and the occasional psycho like this. Now that's totally, it's the NRA member living out in the hinterlands of North Dakota and remembering the good old days when Amos and Andy was on TV. That's really the ones doing the mass shootings. And of course, we've got Joe Biden. But it's predictable that he's going to push his anti-gun crap every time that there's a tragedy like this. Obama used to do that too. It doesn't work. The public tends to go in the other direction, but yeah, that's what happened. All we know is this, and this is why I don't even normally weigh in on things like this, because fog of war style, everything is muddy at first. You've got a female individual who identifies as male. It could be testosterone related, although I think there's a different reason. I'll get into that briefly. Shot up a school and killed some kids. And the blood is still warm. It's not dry yet. And the bodies are still warm. And everyone is swarming in to get clout and weigh in on what happened. And I find that sad. I find it sad how many mental rejects in society have big mouths and have a platform to talk about such things. Because that's really what it is. You're not being informed by it. It's just them chasing subscribers. It's a sickness in their minds. They're deeply mentally depraved. They're almost as depraved as the shooter. Here's what we know. As I said, trans individual, et cetera, went to the school. When the person is shooting up a place where they've been before, the obvious conclusion is that there is likely a link to those things. There's a reason why they shot it up, obviously. It wasn't randomly chosen. So if it's not randomly chosen, there was a reason. I suspect there may have been some sort of mistreatment at the school, or maybe bullying or something like that. Probably poor parenting. That seems to be heavily correlated with mass shootings. And probably depression, or some antidepressants specifically, not the depression itself. The use of psychotic substances in order to defeat a so-called mental illness. That's probably what happened here. But I don't know that. And I'm willing to admit that I don't know that. I'm not going to state for the record, yes, this is trans violence against non-trans people. This is a leftoid individual who decided to shoot up a bunch of Christians. Well, we don't know that. Well, this was an NRA member. Yeah, quite clearly. Clearly, the average NRA member is hip to that sort of thing. Decided to shoot up a bunch of kids because of white rage or MAGA or something. God damn, the Coffinriders really get on my nerves. It's one thing if you want to do flippant trolling about some tragic event and you're just being hyperbolic and people can kind of tell, hey, you know, this person talking about decorating with the bones of the dead is probably not being serious. Although law enforcement takes that more seriously than the precursors to threats that we get from people like this. I would notice that. Boston Marathon bombing. I would point that out as well. When somebody is coming out and in their self-serving, egotistical echo chamber, stunted little mind, their emotionally and intellectually stunted mind, their immediate hot take is, hey, how can I score political or social points and get more of a following online by reacting to a bunch of kids getting killed? Yeah, that's you're depraved. You are lower than low. You're barely even capable of human cognition, I suppose, at some point. Now this cat's trying to steal the limelight. M. Lambert, how long until red flag laws are used to disarm trans people? Yeah, that would be politically incorrect. You're only supposed to do it based on race or gender. Captain Cannabis sent $1. No comment, thank you. Seattle said maybe food. I don't know what that means, but thank you for the donation anyway. Oh, by the way, speaking of food, I may get an MRE shipment today. It's in fact fairly likely. So if I have to go off for a minute, it's not swatting or something. I'm getting a British MRE, and I will be eating it. British MREs are pretty on point. Dark Gary 92, Trump Kitty 2024. Tell me that's not a winning ticket. Yeah, Cat could do the job better than Kamala's doing, arguably better than Pence did as well. Grevin Share, at this moment, I am being blue-balled on the end of the world. Every day I hear World War III, global economic meltdown, and climate change is going to end my life imminently. However, it never arrives. Yeah, it's interesting. We've been warned about these things for decades and decades. Like since I was a little kid, you know, the world's going to end in a few years if we don't massively overhaul society. And that overhaul just happens to involve more taxes and more money for the people who are actually destroying society. Kind of a tell. King of Biltong, good morning from Antons in Roanoke, Texas. Hashtag Clank Nation. Thank you for the moolah. I will shovel it back into buying Biltong someday. I'll just show up the fucking store, buy like $2,000 worth of biltong. Hey, I'll be eating high on the hog or the beef for some time. Tyler Morrison, wrong narrative. The shooter identifies as an AR. Yeah, it's the gun that did it, not the person that pressed the trigger. Just remember that. Styx's black leather jacket. Oh, so I'm finally good enough for you today, huh? It's finally the right weather for this sort of getup. I get cold easily after an incident in 9th grade involving getting frost nip on my extremities during a field trip in which I was not properly dressed. I had no weather forewarning, though, at the time, so I claim ignorance. Anthony Thompson, what's your opinion on the FedNow rollout? The banking collapse seems conveniently timed. FedNow? I don't know exactly what you mean by that. If you mean the raising of interest rates, it'll just make the problem worse, probably. So, yeah, you could have some more banking issues in the coming months. Robot Trucker, shout out to Scott Horton and Anti-War Radio. Fallen Hero 4567 sent $2. No comment, thank you. Opinionated Junkie, the right is disingenuous when they say things were always woke. Even the Young Turks was this crazy back in 2009. Yeah, wokeness is an old sort of shtick, sometimes recycled, like with the digital blackface thing. MG, conveniently, no false flag narrative from AJ types. Yeah. MF Damien, all of the outrage baiting disgusts me almost as much as the act they're using for bait. Is there an abstract moral case to be made for accelerationism? Counterintuitive, but I ponder this every time. I do not support accelerationism. I think that it's defeatist and black pillery myself. So no, I would say no. Maxwell JW, some people are theorizing the shooting was some kind of reprisal attack for the anti-hormone therapy bill signed in Tennessee. Thoughts? Again, it's possible, but we don't know for sure at the moment. It's possible. Long Dong John, surely it's fair to call the Nashville shooting an anti-Christian hate crime. It could be, but again, we don't have direct evidence of that at this time, and I'm not willing to copy Coffinriders and say that I know it declaratively. Sigil Stone 17 on Rumble. Morning, Sticks. I got acquitted of 2 of 3 charges yesterday. It's a good week. I'm wondering what the charges were, but congratulations. Parking in a banned zone? Serial jaywalking? Being politically incorrect, probably. Paracelsus Underak. FedNow is for a Federal Reserve public account. That's a terrible idea. The Federal Reserve needs to butt out of everything. End the Fed, or at the very least, audit it. Auditing it would be much more funny because then you'd be able to see all the funny money that's actually involved in their goings-ons. Next news story. Agatha Christie's classic detective novels edited to remove potentially offensive language. That's funny. That's like something I covered a couple weeks ago. Oh, that was Roald Dahl with James and the Giant Peach and shit like that being sanitized. And they decided to, after much pushback, to shelve their plans. This isn't the first time, by the way, that Christie has been sanitized. It points it out in here that the summary issues in 2020 actually were already being pre-sanitized. Let's go through some of these things. The amendments to the books, published between 1920 and 76, the year of Christie's death, include changes to the narrator's inner monologue. For example, Perrault's description of another character as a Jew in Christie's debut novel, The Mysterious Affair of Styles, has been stripped out of the new version. Well, there you go, some Stalinization for the politically correct era. Throughout the revised version of the short story collection, Miss Marple's Final Cases and 2 Other Stories, the word native has been replaced with local, the Telegraph reports. Okay. I don't know the context in which the quote is specifically used because it doesn't give it conveniently, but you shouldn't be changing the language at all. Those aren't synonyms. A passage describing a servant as black and grinning has been revised, and the character is now simply referred to as nodding with no reference to his race. Again, interesting. Okay. Well, it's totally different from the original. Agatha Christie is rolling over in her grave. I've never read any of her works, but now apparently I have to get some of the vintages in order to read them in their original form before Stalin decides to disappear it forever. Let's see. And in the 1937 novel Death on the Nile, references to Nubian people have been removed throughout. So in other words, a bunch of now politically incorrect colloquial terms have been stripped from these works, and you should not do any business with the company. Not just for Christie's works, but any of them. Get vintage. There's probably 100 editions of every single work she's released for sale right now on fucking eBay. So just get physical media. If you get digital media, get something that's old. Keep it local in removable storage because, again, I warn you, there is coming a time, and it will not be far from now, when your operating system will give automatic telemetric capabilities to the company to say, well, this is not woke enough. Well, this is unacceptable. It has the wrong word in it, or it has the wrong meaning in it. They'll probably use AI for this determination. They'll go through your shit and they will randomly delete it without telling you. Or if they tell you, because of course it's not even cloud storage, so they might not tell you at all, they'll say, well, we don't want our operating systems to be hosting material that we find objectionable. We don't want to spread hate after all. We got to nip it in the bud at the local users end. That will happen, by the way. So be careful what operating system you're using. Make sure it's all on detachable drives, and be careful with your files because they may suddenly go bye-bye because Bill Gates or somebody else doesn't like them. Ozzy's Robots, trans were such more mellow during Rocky Horror. SP Elite, going to Vancouver tomorrow. What should I do over there? Stay in your hotel room and not go outside. That's what I would do in a major city. Riaciona, Puerto Rico. Ed Krasenstein's last post was 19 hours ago. Man, he's actually getting some sleep today. Matthew Robert Witherspoon, FedNow is not an idea. It's being rolled out in July. How sad. I'll make sure to not engage in their idea. Now we've got Elizabeth Warren backhanding Kamala Harris. Oh boy, oh boy. She has endorsed Biden and for re-election, and she has decided not to mount a challenge. So one of the people that could have been kind of, sort of, actually viable, you know, not deservingly, but among Democrats could have potentially gotten elected, is standing down. She's running for the Senate. She's running for re-election. She was asked, with regards to her thought about Harris here, Warren stopped short of endorsing Harris as Biden's 24 running mate during a January interview on Boston Public Radio. So this is some time ago, but it still bears mentioning because she has not elaborated upon this. The radio host asked the senator if Harris should be Biden's running mate if he were to run for re-election in 24, which Warren appears to be hinting she believes will be the case because there's no reason for her to stand down with viability if Biden's not running. I think he's actually crazy enough to run again, which means that probably he loses. I really want to defer to what makes Biden comfortable on his team, Warren said. I've known Kamala for a long time. I like Kamala. I knew her back when she was an attorney general and was still teaching. And we worked on the housing crisis together, so we go way back. But they have to be a team, and my sense is they are. I don't mean that by suggesting I think there are any problems. I think they are. Wow. What a goddamn backhand. I remember, by the way, her comments at the time back in January and how she got dragged for it and then came out and half-assed it and sort of half-walked it back. I like Kamala Harris a lot, but I'm not going to talk about that. It's Biden's decision. So Elizabeth Warren officially is expecting Joe Biden to actually run for re-election. Hate to tell the Dems this, but even if the majority of you don't want him to run again, a significant majority, unlike the 50-50 with Trump, which is going to play a role in the general, by the way, honking aside, the insiders are expecting him to run. You're going to be probably stuck with Joe Biden. If he runs with his incumbency, regardless of the fact that it's almost certain that he loses, and I do believe that is a near certainty, honking aside again, I don't even know if that would save his re-election bid, considering the massive malaise involved. It looks like you're going to be stuck with him because if Elizabeth Warren's out and the only other people with name recognition, like Buttigieg is part of the cabinet, so he can't run. Bernie Sanders is old as fuck. He's not probably going to run. He's crazy if he does. Also rans like AOC, maybe even Gavin Newsom might get in, but, you know, fighting the incumbent is going to be an uphill battle. It's the same uphill battle that DeSantis has against Trump if he runs. Trump has the technical incumbency and a huge grassroots base of support. Illustrator, when a violent trans leaves a manifesto, is it called a tranifesto? Interesting turn of words. Matthew Robert Witherspoon, all transactions will go through the FedNow system. Yeah, well, fuck the Fed. Ozzy's Robots, so a future business to consider. Refurbish old computers and maintain old operating systems and software to thwart incoming censorship from new systems. A good idea, although I would point out that there are alternate operating systems that are not run by Microsoft or Apple. It's just that 90% of people use those operating systems, which is a real shame. Like, nobody should be using any Apple products. And Microsoft has, you know, there are redeeming qualities and there are ways to patch it up to make it more secure. Like, I'm using Windows right now. When I get a new computer, I'm probably not going to be using Windows because Windows 11 is a pile of fucking horseshit. I don't need everything to be McCloud, telemetry and stuff like that. Give me an operating system like XP where I can control everything. I go on the internet and I do what I want. I don't need all of your telemetry and stuff like that. It's not necessary. Malik Artorian, take the last bit of my wage slave bucks and take care of that fam, Wiz. Love you, man. Thank you. Cross-eyed Sniper on Rumble. Police brutality, had to take care of the shooter in Tennessee because she genuinely lacked the balls to put a bullet in her own head. Yeah, it's interesting. Next news story, we got some hilarious TDS, by the way. This one definitely bears mentioning. Why Trump 24 is far more dangerous than Trump 16. Oh, if you weren't ready for MAGA and all of the terrible and dangerous things that Donald Trump did, like tax reform or securing the border or not starting World War III over Korea or something. If you think that that was dangerous and terrible because we've propagandized to you with a wall of propaganda for years, wait till you see Ultra MAGA, Trump 24. The new set list features many of his old hits. Xenophobia, racism, I don't know where, but supposedly they're there. But he's added 2 new tunes that make him a much bigger threat now than he was the first time. Donald Trump was back out on the campaign trail on Saturday. There's a temptation to dismiss this buffoon. Yeah, there's very unbiased writing here, by the way. And his tired act. And in some sense, it's understandable. He's a wheezing old third-tier rat packer spewing out his 2 or 3 long-ago hits at shabby Seen Better Days Hotel, a couple miles off the strip. But simultaneously, he is dangerous. More dangerous than he was in 2016. I watched his Waco speech, or as much of it as I could take. So you're ignorant, too. You're literally professing that. And this much was unmistakable. Yes, he's still recycling the old hits like xenophobia and racism. Again, they're not really present there. But, you know, if you have Trump derangement syndrome, you see that shit everywhere anyway. But there are 2 arguments from this new Trump that make him a much bigger threat to the Republic than he was in 2016. Revenge and apocalypse. Ooh, yeah, it's interesting. I seem to recall in 2016, he was actually warning people that if Hillary Clinton won, there would probably be a 3rd World War. I happen to agree with him, by the way. She was constantly warmongering after Ron McCain style. Democrats were oblivious to this, but, you know, you actually looked what she was saying and you would tell it for yourself. So, yeah, he was already doing that before. And as far as revenge, dude, he was always already going down the populistic route in 2016, too. None of that's changed. Some people are actually upset over that. Some people that are Trump fans are upset because he's not elaborating more and getting more vicious or something like that. Much as I told them in 2016, Trump is a reformer. He is not God Emperor. He's not really rocking the boat enough to, you know, throw it over and sink it, which is what the black-pilled balkanizers want. He wants to reform the system and improve it. He had good success before. He hopefully would have good success in a second term. Whether he goes Ronald Reagan mode and the first term was good and the second term's kind of lackluster remains to be seen. We got to give him a second term in order to tell. I just think that compared to every other person currently in the race or likely to be in the race, he is the one that I would vote for. Absolutely, hands down. Already seen his on-the-job work. Already seen how he works, and there was no extremism there. It wasn't artificially fucking concocted by the libtoids, basically. Oh my God, Trump tried to overthrow the government. Well, no, he didn't. Well, you're an extremist. MAGA hat wearer. MAGAT. Donald Trump hates gay people. Well, what has he done to harm gay people? Well, you've got your head in the sand. I'm not going to give you any examples, but just fucking trust me, bro. Yeah, I remember him getting flack, actually, from the TradCon right wing for sending billions of dollars to African countries to forestall what literally happened a couple of days ago in Uganda, which is that they recriminalized gay behavior, homosexuality, and prescribing the death penalty for it. Donald Trump literally cleared a bunch of money to try to dissuade those countries from doing so. Interesting how that one didn't make it onto MSNBC with Joy Reid now, isn't it? What a goddamn extremist. What a terrible homophobe. Yeah, Donald Trump hates anyone who's not white and Christian. That's why he made more of an inroads into the Hispanic voting bloc than literally any other Republican ever has. Yes, what a goddamn villain. Student of history. If you thought 2016 MAGA and 2020 Ultra MAGA were terrifying, just wait for the 2024 Super Omega Giga MAGA 9000. Basically, the premise of the article. OMG puppies. Win 7 was peak Microsoft. Win 11 feels like they are moving towards turning my laptop into a Chromebook. Yeah, I'm not going to use it. I'm going to use that fucking shit. If I have to use Windows at all, I'll downgrade back to Windows 10. At least I can semi-control it. Till they cut it off entirely, then I'll have no choice but to move to Linux. Doubt Shadow. Nashville, the first recorded Tumblrite roid rage. Again, we don't have any clue whether that's the case. It's possible, but it's not necessarily the case, and I'm not going to coffin ride and speculate. I'll tell the cold hard facts. A former student shot up a school. The individual is female but considers themselves male. They're transgendered or trans-presenting or whatever the fuck you'd call it, and is 28 and killed a bunch of people. That's basically what we know. That's all. So I'm not going to get into anything further and start speculating. Was it hatred of Christians? Was it testosterone overdose? Was it MAGA? Was it Tumblr? Was it, I don't know. I don't fucking know. Neither does anyone else right now. But they're all speculating because they want to give you juicy shit to go by so they get more attention. They're hoping that you retweet their tweet. They're hoping that you repost their YouTube video, and they're so goddamn caught up in that, including the legacy media for their fucking ad-driven clickbait, that they don't really care about whether they're right or wrong. They're just pushing a narrative. Most of what you see on the legacy media is pure falsehood. It's purely fiction, but they get a lot of attention for it, declining over time, but they still get it. That's why, by the way, they hate Twitter so much. Twitter now charges them to put out their propaganda. It makes them really sad. Next news story. Kentucky Senator Rand Paul says staff member brutally attacked and sustained life-threatening injuries. Yes, indeed. One of Rand Paul's staffers was attacked by 42-year-old Glenn Neal. Now, what we did learn, and I didn't, in the morning video, I didn't point this out because I had seen several articles and it wasn't actually listed. The individual that did the stabbing was a complete goddamn psycho who just got out of federal prison literally the day before. So my speculation was correct. This is a DC high crime revolving door prison issue as opposed to a politically motivated attack. It does not appear that the attacker understood even that this was a Rand Paul staffer. Not really a mitigating factor, stabbed him half to death, and the injuries were life-threatening. I don't have an update on his condition at this time. You can go and fact check that for yourself. Hope is that he recovers. And remember, Rand Paul himself was attacked years ago. A neighbor attacked him for fucking, I think, apparently no reason whatsoever. And he has this problem. It's beat up on Rand Paul Day every fucking day. He doesn't even, a person doesn't even need to know that the staffer's working with him. It's just DC and its dysfunction. Hey, we're going to let this person out unsupervised after, 12 years in federal prison for violent crimes. Wonderful. Doc Holliday, do you think it's a good idea to perform surgeries like addictomy, pump them full of mind-altering drugs, and allow them access to weapons? The rights of the militia are fundamentally absolute. If you think that a person is a menace to society, they should be in an asylum or in prison. If they're not in an asylum, they're not in prison, and they're not known to be a specific public menace. That is, that not their identity, not drug usage, they're smoking weed, who gives a shit? People drink and have guns all the time. That's going to cause more violence than weed or something like that. None of that matters. Go back to true Bruin-esque originalism. The founders would have recognized that the militia comprises everyone of the age of majority, so able to vote. That's why 21 to buy a gun is blatantly unconstitutional. That is embattled in multiple courts at the moment, but it drags on forever. Age 18 up, they're not demented, they're not incarcerated, and they're not in an asylum. That's it. That's the militia. It doesn't matter if you don't think that they should be trusted with a gun is completely goddamn irrelevant. There are plenty of people who say, well, you've got a MAGA hat and you've got too many guns. And you make posts on social media that are too far right. You shouldn't be able to own a firearm. You're a menace. Fuck you. Who cares? I would extend the same to leftoids. Yeah, okay, I think this person's lifestyle is freaky or something. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're an imminent threat. In this case, it appears to be a personal grudge related to the school that the person actually had physically attended 10 years ago. So that's not necessarily even psychopathy, beyond the element of criminal lunacy involved in killing kids. That's not necessarily that. It could be due to some personal grudge. We have no way of knowing. Aussie's Robots. The Saudis agreed to build the world's biggest refinery in China and trade oil in yuan. Seems like there's a planned collapse of the dollar to move towards a digital currency and distract you in between. I don't think so. It's not the petrodollar, it's the aircraft carrier dollar, and China still has some problems floating those from time to time. But they do want a digital currency. It doesn't have anything to do with China. It has to do with wanting to monitor everyone's purchases in real time. BW, I guess resisting communism is fascist. Salty Keldion, Muscari Black Rifles. Why aren't people advocating for pressure cooker or motor vehicle control after Boston, Waukesha, and Nice are the truck of peace? Yeah, exactly. Cars take lives too, and more of them. Muddy Drip 6665. Don't forget that Jane Fonda, I think you mean Jane Fonda, said on The View that murdering Christians was a good alternative to marching and protesting. While her statements were tongue-in-cheek, had she made similar statements being a right-winger about a left-wing group, she would have been dragged and crucified mercilessly. So I understand the hypocrisy, although it was a tongue-in-cheek reference. It was clearly hyperbolic. Jane Fonda is hyperbolic all of the goddamn time. She's an attention whore, too. She used to just be a whore. Now she's an attention whore. Jared Pierce, letting violent people out on the streets purposely on a national scale is a political attack. Yeah, I mean, it happens all the time. You've got someone, they're found guilty of a non-violent crime. They spent fucking 15 years in prison, but you've got someone engaged in, kidnapping, mass rape, a serial killer or something. They get out in 10. I wish that were hyperbolic. You've got people involved in legit violent crimes, in some cases classed as terrorism, who effectively they get booked, they get a mugshot taken, they're out the next day. And you've got people who jaywalk too many times and they have to serve several months. It's a screwy system. Yes, the left is fundamentally correct. The justice system needs massive reform. It just doesn't need the kind of reforms that they tend to fixate on. Dark World XL. Any mods you like for Fallout games? Mine is the Jay Sawyer mod for Fallout New Vegas. Makes the game much better. I use a shit ton of mods on Fallout 4. I can't even name them all because I don't have the time to do any gaming right now. When you've got a child and you are technically triple employed, you got time to cook a good meal. That's about it. BW, the leftoids have shown to be more of a threat. Yes, the left is more violent than the right, generally speaking. If anything, the right wing is much more hesitant, almost to a fault in some cases, to even go and fucking protest because of black pilling. John Diamond, top of the morning, Lord Clankington. I'm reading your book on the Cistercian monks, and I am loving it. Oh, thank you. Ozzy's robots, mentally deranged trans might take Jane seriously. I don't think anyone is taking Jane Fonda seriously. I'll be honest about that one. Her hyperbolic moron take aside, again, she's like, her relevance faded 50 years ago. Sigil Stone 17. Chris Chan was released from prison. Word I can't say on YouTube. Shoots up a religious school and a furry admits to diddling a dead animal. Twitter was wild yesterday. I heard about Chris Chan. I don't know anything about the furry. Maybe somebody can DM me with that one. It wouldn't surprise me, but Jen Suckett. Next coffee on this cheap bitch. Thank you very much. Clanks to you. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Fuck grog and shit like that. Just chug coffee until your heart stops. Disclaimer, that's a hyperbolic joke. I'm not encouraging you to drink coffee until you die. Doc Holiday, I agree with your assessment 100%, but I think the good of the whole outweighs the feelings of the unstable and should be institutionalized. If someone is unstable enough to institutionalize, and do it. But if they're not, if they're capable of functioning, generally speaking, and they're not making violent ideations and threats or something, you can't disarm them. We can't go down that road because it will inevitably be used by the authoritarians to disarm other people who clearly aren't a threat. Put your personal feelings about their screwy views aside and just be a purist. That's what we need. Next news story. Funny one. We've got Michelangelo derangement syndrome. I was asked, by the way, by a subscriber to address this. Principal forced out after student shown Michelangelo's David. Now, this story is more convoluted than the headlines let on. That is true. It has to do with notifying parents beforehand about potentially objectionable material. Michelangelo's David statue is not goddamn objectionable material. And this is what I fucking hate about Christian schools. Obvious. This is what I hate. This is the stealing defeat from the jaws of victory that I speak about all the time with people that are on the more right wing of politics. You've got a situation in which schools are teaching kids about butt plugs and anal sex and pedo shit and everything else under the sun. What does this school choose to fixate on? A piece of classic art that is so ubiquitous, virtually everyone in the world has seen it at some time. If you get turned on by the flaccid, stony cock of the Michelangelo statue, more power to you. I guess you probably fit in with some pagan cult from 3,000 years ago, some Orphic cult or something from antiquity, where people would fuck the statue or something in order to gain the favor of the god. I'm sure that people, by the way, did stuff like that and were definitely watched doing so by members of the other gender who took great glee in the fact that they were fucking stupid. nobody, as far as I know, no reasonable person would get turned on by the Michelangelo statue. And no kid is going to see this as sexual. Okay, if anything, what's the average 5th or 6th grader going to think or say or do when they see the penis statue? Ew, that's gross. So it's a penis. It's weird. It's dirty and stuff like that. They're not going to get turned on by it. They're not going to get corrupted away from Jesus or something by a fucking classical statue made by a Christian, no less, in that classical fucking period. It's fucking stupid. By the way, the principal who had to resign from his position because one parent complained the material was pornographic and 2 other parents said they wanted to be notified of the lesson before it was given to their children. The instruction also included Michelangelo's creation of Adam painting and Botticelli's Birth of Venus. Oh my God, they saw part of a titty as well. That's really going to corrupt those fucking kids. Tallahassee Classical School is reportedly required to teach Renaissance art to 6th graders as part of the conservative Christian curriculum it follows. Strip it out of the course then. Tell them they're going to be ignorant about Renaissance art now because every other fucking goddamn painting and statue is a nude in the Renaissance. Have you studied art history? I did at UVM. I never got turned on by all of the massive numbers of titties and asses and penises that are in all of their art. Surprised they don't have something with Jesus with his dong out, because that would have been perfectly fashionable at the time. Long as it wasn't a big dong. The small dongs were fashionable at the time. I guess he's a grower, not a shower. I mean, come on, dude. You've got people teaching kids the most perverted actual pornography in the world. Stuff about butt plugs and BDSM and stuff that like a 12-year-old doesn't need to read. A fucking high schooler doesn't need to be exposed to, especially in a taxpayer-funded setting. I realize this is a private school, but you know it still holds true. You're worrying about a kid seeing a statue with a big stone penis on it? Has there ever been anyone without a paraphilia, like they get a statue fetish or something? It was clear. Look at the statue. There's nothing sexual there. The kid looks in the mirror, they see a penis or a vagina. I mean, that's not sexualized. What are you going to do? You know, ban mirrors in the school? Oh my God, the kids might go to the bathroom and get the wrong fucking idea. They're not allowed to use the bathroom in this school. They might see their own genitals. Trash Panda, do you think we should gatekeep who gets to vote and who runs for office like in Starship Troopers? I think Heinlein was right. Well, who does the gatekeeping? And who determines by what virtue that gatekeeping happens? That's the whole problem. It's all well and good to say, hey, if I had the power, I could order things properly. But you're not the one that's going to have the power. You're going to be handing it to a bunch of billionaires and oligarchs and people who are entrenched in political power for centuries. Not the sort of people that I want to run the world. And Michelangelo's statue is a big problem. His tiny, flaccid penis, it really gets people going. Those juices really get going with those elementary school kids, I'm sure, seeing fucking Michelangelo statue. Miguel Barrera, did you hear about the Restrict Act? Yes, I did. I will probably be talking about that tomorrow, but there's more to unpack, so I'm still looking into it. Muddy Drip 6667, really wish you could debate David Hogg. His tweets have been insufferable as of late, but I am watching your replies to him on Twitter. I've already challenged him. I challenged David Hogg to debate the concept of gun control and things attendant to it. No response, because he wants someone with a bigger platform to debate him, because it's all coffin writing. It's clout seeking. He gets more money that way. Doc Holliday, again, I agree. We have no other option. We can't go down that road. Second Amendment is non-negotiable despite collateral damage. Exactly. People will always die and kill each other and everything else under the sun. Getting rid of guns is not going to change that. Sparky, will the petrodollar be replaced by the petroclank? If so, us clankers can live off the labors of the rest of the world like the U.S. did. Yeah, we're going to have the coffee dollar. Ethiopia will soon be a first world country. Next news story. Next super chat rather. Sigil Stone 17. I DM'd you with the furry with the dead fox. The fact he's proud of it and hasn't deleted even a single tweet. God. And he also said the Viet Cong took Jane Fonda seriously when she betrayed those POWs live on TV, and they disappeared forever. Her wasp ass belongs in prison. Yeah, later on when it became politically inconvenient to her, what you could say is career, she apologized for that whole matter. Il Sarto, what's your opinion on pit bulls? I would never want to own one. I don't know why anyone else would want to own one. But again, giving the ability to ban them to a government, you're giving them the arbitrary ability to ban anything else under the sun that's animal related. So I would say I wouldn't support that. Not a bad account. Shouldn't we at least prohibit semi-automatic guns? Yeah, it's funny. There are a lot of liberals who want to do that. When you try to explain to them that a revolver is dual action revolvers, technically in the same class and can be made back in the 1800s, all of a sudden they don't have much to say. Eli worked with an Italian-trained sculptor for years. Made him buy a great AR-15. Look up Icarus by Brandon Roy. He's a great sculptor and can use 3D computer sculpture. Skills are great. Sounds good. Next news story. The GOP's Parent Bill of Rights excludes millions of parents. Oh my God, how terrible. If we did, this is gaslighting, and it's co-posting for CRT. Of course, it comes from MSNBC and Hayes Brown and others. The idea is that they're still trying to rebrand critical race theory and all of its subcomponents to make them more palatable. People were confronted with the fact that kids were being sexualized and shown revisionist Marxist history that isn't real, et cetera, and being told to be guilty because of their skin color, being taught that discrimination is actually a good thing, depending on who it's aimed at, all in the name of equity. And people rejected that. It was soundly and roundly rejected by literally every demographic in the US. So literally no one supports it. Liberal black lesbian, less than a 50-50 shot that she supports teaching CRT in a public school. There is no race, there is no gender, there is no creed, there is no religious bloc, there is nothing in favor of teaching revisionist Marxist history bullshit in public schools. The Republicans, who normally fucking don't do anything about these sorts of things except for bitch and complain and never put forth a bill at all, doomed as though it is in the Senate, we will admit, have finally dreamed up a bill, the Parent Bill of Rights Act. Hey, you have the right to know what your kid's being taught. You have the right to weigh in on it, and the schools should not be using taxpayer money to front bullshit to your kids. No, fourth graders do not need to be taught how to insert a butt plug. No, fifth graders do not need to be taught that skyscrapers are made out of cotton, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. What do? They make the vapid insinuation, again, flying in the face of literally all snap polling on the issue that I ever saw. I don't even think that the leftoid sites managed to scrape together support for critical race theory or anything attendant to wokeness, et cetera, at large. Now they're gaslighting and saying, well, this is only for white conservative parents. Yes, so in other words, you want black kids to be taught revisionism too. You want them to be sexualized too. So it's equity, see? We're going to lie to all of the kids. We just want equal opportunity lies, says the left. That's basically, I mean, read through the fucking article here. The basic premise is that we want every kid in the country whose parents don't have enough money, by the way, to do a private schooling or tutoring and homeschooling. Those people are exempt. The politicians and the legacy media execs and all of those people, the bankers' kids, they'll be taught correctly. They'll be taught real things. Everyone else, 90% of the population, which are in public school, they'll be taught Marxist lies. So at last, we've achieved equity. And I made a video a few days ago pointing out that equity effectively doesn't mean uplifting anyone because they figure that's too hard. It's hard to improve the school system. It's real easy to denigrate the AP students, though, and bring them down. That's what equity means. It's a pile of horseshit that is literally and explicitly meant. These people are malevolent. They do mean this. They want to weaken our civilization. Why? So that it can be collapsed and replaced. That's their idea of a perfect world. They're afraid of the fact that people in the United States and also other Western countries are generally armed. They're afraid of the fact that they have had upward mobility. They're terrified. There's a reason they're terrified of crypto, for example. They're terrified of new tech for the same reason. They're terrified. They want to use the war on disinfo to try to suppress independent commentators like myself because it gives us upward mobility. I can sit here and analyze things and make money doing so. I've risen up from the lower end of the working class to the upper middle class, and they fucking hate me for it. It wouldn't even matter if I was a goddamn liberal. They don't want even liberals to be able to do that unless they toe the uniparty line and take a contract with the DNC or something. It's basically this enormous screed of gaslighting. Again, link in the description. You can read it for yourself. Is there anything in there that's accurate in any way? It's a complete mischaracterization of the entire issue. all these parents are just racist. Yeah, the black parents speaking out against sexualizing kids are all a bunch of racists. I thought they couldn't be racist. According to the left, it's news to me that they're able to be racist. Professor Plaguebad, I get the impression these parents don't actually understand what Renaissance art actually entails. Yeah, a bunch of nudes. Yeah, maybe at the time somebody got turned on by it because they're, whacked out, or, they're too ugly to get laid or something. But I don't think that the average fourth grader is getting turned on by Michelangelo statues. I thought that kids these days use like TikTok and shit and watch other people twerking and shit. I don't think that they're into classical art unless there's some paraphilia involved. Westfield 90, love Trump, but problems facing the nation are too serious. Trump on Hannity showed his ego is hurt by DeSantis. We need someone serious, not easily hurt. I didn't get that sense whatsoever. I don't think that he's hurt at all. I'm still Team Trump myself. Ozzy's Robots, did you see where ChatGPT said if you're white and prefer to date whites, you're racist, but if you're black and want to date black, it's okay. Woke AI is scary. GPT effectively crawls a bunch of other shit and amalgamates opinions from others and uses predictive learning. So it is not actually a machine thinking for itself. That's why most of what it says is nonsense. BW, maybe make leftoids live as Chinese citizens. Yeah, they would just say, well, it's not real leftism. They're state capitalists, actually. Fifi Brindaseer 3 on Rumble. Anyone who pays taxes votes. If you wanted to pay peg voting ability to actually paying taxes into the system, I'd be more amenable to that. But it wouldn't have any chance of passing. And then the final story, this is a brief one, and then I'll go offline. Please, no more super chats, because I do have to start the chili at some point. It has to brew for several hours before it's good. Elon Musk actually announcing that there's going to be a change on Twitter. Starting April 15th, so not long from now, only verified accounts will be eligible to be in the For You recommendations. I strongly support this. Number one, because it personally benefits me because I'm fucking verified. Number two, I see a lot of clutter by random people and, in fact, bots and spam accounts and shit when I go there, just because people are botting. Well, if you limit it to accounts that are paid for, you're not going to see the bot accounts. So at the very least, that is an improvement. And if you want to see just the stuff from people that you follow, you can always switch tabs there. So that's a good change. Here's what I don't like about his proposal. It's the second part. This is the only realistic way to address advanced AI bot swarms taking over. Otherwise, it is a hopeless losing battle. Again, I agree with that. Voting in polls will require verification for the same reason. And what I said is, why not give the users the ability to choose who can vote on their polls? So if I make a poll on Twitter, I could do only verified accounts. So only people I know that there's, if any bots involved, not many of them. Or I can do it for just my followers. Well, maybe some of my followers bot, but ultimately, at the end of the day, I've chosen only people who subscribe to my Twitter feed are going to participate in the poll. Or you can make it for everyone. So there's no limitation. You're not really concerned about that. If I'm asking an innocuous question, why would I be concerned about botting? What's your favorite color? Red, blue, yellow, or chartreuse? Well, who cares if somebody bots the fucking poll? It's not a scientific poll anyway. So in this case, I strongly oppose Elon Musk's second proposal. The first one's fine. I strongly oppose the second proposal on the basis that Twitter voting will become useless. You're not giving users the choice to expand the poll beyond just verified accounts. I have no way of knowing how many of the people that follow me regularly are verified. I need a larger sample size. At the very least, I'd like to be able to sample my own followers. So people that follow the account, by the way, give an incentive for people to follow your account by making polls. So actually, it's a good thing for the site overall and helps more engagement, helps people engage with things that might be outside of their echo chamber, even if only for the purposes of criticizing someone's poll and screwing with it with an opinion that's outside of the opinion of the poll maker. Otherwise, people just go back to using straw poll. It has more than 4 options on their polls anyway, so there's already an ingrained advantage to using the service. Years ago, pretty much everything used to be straw poll. Nobody used Twitter polls. People started using them because of the increase in engagement and the increased functionality of the site, and now Musk looks like he's on the edge of potentially undoing that. That is not wise. Give people the choice to have those 3 settings, or maybe a hybrid setting or something. It doesn't even matter. Let me at least poll the people that follow me. so that I can get a read of the room for the purposes of my content creation, which is not entirely on Twitter. That's what I weighed in as a suggestion. BW, look, commies succeeding, collapsing our country. No, so far they're not succeeding. They would like to convince you that they're succeeding so you don't fight back. If you actually look at polling on wokeness and things like that, the commies are losing, actually, at the moment, very badly. That's why a bunch of corporations have to pick up the slack for them, because they're too fucking stupid to do it themselves. Some of them are just pawns, mind slaves, lemmings. They don't realize they're being used as pawns. And other people are definitely, they're malevolent when they're pushing such things. Anyway, it's about time for me to go offline so that I can begin the chili in a little bit, and it's going to brew while the baby takes her nap, and lots and lots of stuff to do. I'm definitely in the mood for chili, and I'm hoping that Liz gets the hot peppers I asked her to get, because I really want to make it extra spicy, because this is the last kind of cold-ish day, probably of the year, until fall. And so I'm going to enjoy something extra spicy. Dump it full of fucking hot peppers and everything else under the sun. That's about all. Peace out.